Welcome back. I feel like this is quite a cozy setup. Um, but today I'm back with another true crime video, which I have not done in forever, and I thought, why not start off the new year with a true crime video? I hope everyone has a great new year, and I hope everybody gets what they want and achieves all of their goals for 2026. So in today's episode, we are going to be talking about an unsolved murder. I've never heard of this because I kind of want to give light to cases that aren't as popular. To Jeannette Depalma, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Who was born on August 3rd, 1956, in Jersey City, in New Jersey. Obviously, she was this teenager who was believed to be murdered sometime around August 7th, 1972, in Springfield Township, Union County, New Jersey. Her body was discovered the following month on a cliff, known to the locals as the Devil Teeth, located in Springsville. The events of her death were subject to sensational coverage in local media for a rumored connection to an alleged occult activity within the area that her body was found. So 6 weeks later, on September 19th, her remains were found on top of a cliff inside sort of a quarry, after a local dog had brought her decomposing right forearm and hand back to its owner. According to several witnesses at the scene, there was skeletal remains, were surrounded by a series of strange, impossible, cult-like objects. Descriptions were kind of varied depending on who you asked, but there was a very commonly agreed upon that the items surrounding her body were strange, such as her remains were found inside a coffin shaped, made up of branches and logs, and inside were several small man-shaped wooden crosses. Some of the residents later claimed that her remains were found lying on a pentagram, potential circulating rumors of a sacrifice, and the pentagram surrounded by mutilated animal remains, which, if that is true, I cannot imagine seeing that, but law enforcement had denied that this was true. They're like, yeah, no. So, and that's what makes researching this case quite difficult, because like I said, there was either not a lot of information, or else there was kind of here their say, but there was further controversy when they discovered her body had been found on a cliff known to the locals for many decades as the Devil's Teeth, which I have no idea what that could mean. But the Springfield Police Department did begin investigating her death after an autopsy could not reveal a cause of death. So her remains and clothing showed no evidence of, bone fractures, bullet wounds, or any sort of knife wounds. There was also no drugs found in her body or around her body, and for some undisclosed reason, the coroner suspected that strangulation was the cause of death, leading the Union County prosecutor's office to treat the case as an unsolved homicide. The coroner also discovered an unusually high amount of lead in her remains, but no explanation was found for this occurrence either. They had no idea why lead was found in her body, but in the early investigation, the police received a tip regarding a homeless man living in the woods near the quarry. This man was known to the locals simply as Red, and it was alleged that he had fled his campsite in the woods shortly after Jeannette went missing, which is obviously not a good look, but the police had ultimately decided that this Red person had absolutely nothing got to do with her disappearance, and they continued to attempt to find leads, but due to a lack of tips from the public, along with the insistent stories told to the police by her family, friends and peers, the case eventually went cold. Because doing some research, it was a lot of hearsay and a lot of kind of different stories from people, which obviously did not help the investigation, which is ultimately sad, and it makes me sad that I have not heard of this case. It's not very well documented in comparison to, the likes of, like, the John Ramsey, the Black Dahlia, Jack the Ripper, Golden State Killer, all them cases that are very sort of well maintained and documented. This one unfortunately slipped through the cracks. So despite the rumours offered by the Springfield police regarding Jeannette's passing as a result of a potential overdose, there was no drugs found on, near, or around her body, and she was not known, according to her friends and her family and anyone that knew her, to use any drugs other than occasionally smoking marijuana socially. In her autopsy, there's no mention of the possible cause of her death being a drug overdose, and a medical examiner went on record stating he suspected strangulation, as he could not rule it out during the autopsy of her remains. So around 2 weeks after the discovery of Jeannette's body, several newspapers began reporting that she may have been the victim of a cult sacrifice, which I believe that's kind of what everybody else is kind of going on. If we're going off what is believed to be how her body was found, and they believe it was either carried out by Satanists or by a local coven of witches who operated inside the nearby Watchog Reservation. This coverage was sprung by reports that the body had been found surrounded by strange objects. Like I said, there was apparently, like, logs and all that, and there was like human remains beside her body, which a lot of people at that time indicated a cult sacrifice. So these rumors naturally set off panic in several of the county communities, which were still recovering from the shock of the John List murders, which apparently only happened 10 months earlier, which I should research that. That can be my next video. But in the late 1990s and the early 2000s, Weird NJ magazine began to report on the decades-old cold case after receiving several anonymous letters according to her death. Editor and co-founder Mark and Morgan began investigating the case and wrote about many suspicious details, including the allegation. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. That Springfield police had lost or destroyed the case file, which is obviously not great, but unfortunately you do hear about that in a lot of cases. But the Springfield Police Department maintains that the file was lost due to flooding by Hurricane Floyd in 1999, but others allege that a copy is apparently still on file, which is kind of interesting. Like, is it lost due to the hurricane, or like completely, or is it still on file? Morgan eventually teamed up with Weird NJ correspondent Jess Pollock to write the book about Death on Devil's Teeth, the strange murder that shocked suburban New Jersey. Throughout the course of their research, they discovered several instances of possible cover-up, connections to other unsolved murders, and previously unknown suspects that were never questioned or anything. In September 2024, Weird NJ reported that they acquired copies of her case file, Jeannette's case file, from the Union County Prosecutor's Office, and according to the magazine, they reviewed the photographs from the crime scene and stated that they were confident that there was no cult activity involved in her death. The magazine further stated that they found no evidence of crosses made from sticks and twigs or a halo of stones or the alleged animal sacrifices that they were allegedly found near the body in the crime scene photographs, which is kind of weird. Like, I was kind of looking to see could I see any pictures, and I don't think I could find any. Not that I would have ever put them in the video, because I feel like that's just disrespectful on a whole different level. Edward Salzoon sued the Union County Prosecutor's Office to test Jeannette's clothing for DNA. He was given a box of documents that contained the FBI crime lab report and medical examiner's report by John Basie, Jeannette's nephew, before he died. The crime lab report states stains were found in her underwear, bra, blouse, and slacks, but were too decomposed for conclusive blood and semen examinations in 1972, which makes absolutely no sense. In 2021, the New York Daily News mentions that the organization named Justice for Jeannette Depalma is dedicated to keeping her memory alive, which is so nice to see. The organizers are continuing to look for clues even as the case approaches the half-century mark, which is insane. It's now over half. It's now been over 50 years. In 2022, the Daily Beast wrote an updated article on her case, and in 2024, the Mirror wrote an updated article. Jeannette is mentioned in the book A Long Walk Home, urging her case to be changed from a suspicious death to a homicide. And the book mentions similarities between Jeannette, Joan Cromer, and Carol Ann Frano killings. I really hope I am pronouncing their names correctly, and I really hope I am not botching it. So lastly, during the spring of 2021, convicted New Jersey serial killer Richard Cottenham, also known as Torso Killer, made a series of written statements to journalists alluding to him having possibly attacked and killed Jeannette while she was hitchhiking. The journalist Jess Pollock, which we had mentioned previously, forwarded as correspondent to the Union County Prosecutor's Office after Cottenham agreed to speak with the investigators if they would meet with him. His statements regarding Jeannette's murder were later printed in the 2022 updated and revised edition of Death of the Devil's Teeth, and as research, this article as of 2022 of December, so 3 years ago, no updates have been given by law enforcement, which makes me so sad and so annoyed. Like, what, it took 9 weeks to find her body, which I know, like, is, if you look at other cases that were kind of in a similar situation of being found, it doesn't sound that bad, but it's like, what if she was found much sooner? Then 100% her case would be solved within a heartbeat. and the fact that the police just don't seem to be doing anything, and the whole like, oh well, her files were destroyed during the hurricane, like, so we can't do anything now. It's just so bloody annoying, but unfortunately you hear it in so many unsolved cases that, you know, and I always kind of link back to John Monet's case as an example of police mishandling everything. And it just sucks because, you know, if police actually did their job, then we would have a lot more solved cases. So yeah, that is, I'm so sorry that it's a short video, but unfortunately there's not a lot of information. But that is the unsolved murder of Jeannette Depalma, and I'm really hoping that, you know, with how much technology have definitely improved a lot since the 70s, I'm really hoping that with new technology that we can now find an answer, and Jeanette's family can have an answer and get some bit of closure. I know it's obviously not the same as having her physically here, because she was only a teenager when she was killed, so she would definitely would still be here today. She could potentially be married, have her own children, possibly grandchildren, but hopefully with the new technology we have, Jeanette's family gets a little bit of closure. And yeah, that is the case of Jeannette Depalma, and I will see you in my next video.